On this episode of A Soul's Quest podcast, Omar and I are going to be discussing why viewing our lives as a quest brings a new zest. Stay tuned. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Excited. It's our first actual episode of season 2.
Yeah.
So this is exciting. Yeah. Oh, you're ready.
Well, I mean, it's just, you script things out, you have your cheat sheets, you got your talking points.
But it's good. It's good. It's going to be good. It's good information. I think this is a good place to start for season 2, just to bring people back to what it is that we're doing, what we're talking about, what we want to sort of, we talked about it on our intro. What we want to see in season 2. So this is sort of just kind of paving the way. So want to get into it?
I feel like season 2 is going to be a more succinct. Well, at least I hope, because I'm a wordy person.
Yeah, but I'm here to help you.
Yeah.
I've
been told that I talk too much. But
not by me.
But I do have to.
You tend to be. You know what I would say this is? Let me fix this for you. You're very passionate. So to those people who say you talk too much, whatever, you're passionate and you have you share from your heart.
Yeah.
And I think that comes across in words, because what else are you supposed to do? Hug and get all crazy with people?
Exactly.
Comes across in words, and people who appreciate it.
I do
understand.
If I take that statement, and I didn't know any better, right? It will be hurtful, and it was hurtful when I was told that. Yeah. But I do need to work on being more succinct in the.
So that's going to be your focus for season 2.
Yes. Yeah, and it's like you got like creative freedom to kind of like say to me, "You get back on the road."
I just want to make sure you all heard that and saw that. If not,
I'm
either
being serious.
Both. I have the liberty, the permission. What did you say?
Yes, you have
to go ahead and say, "All right, chop." Sorry, hit the microphone. Chop. Okay, enough.
Yeah.
Done. Okay.
Wrap it up, B.
Wrap it. You know what I'm gonna do? That's exactly what I'm gonna do. Wrap it up, B.
Yeah, wrap it up,
right.
B.
Okay, so let's get into it. Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. So basically, how we're gonna run this episode is I'm just gonna ask you sort of a variety of questions, and then I just kind of want you to answer, and I'm gonna.
But you're gonna help me answer them too, aren't you?
Of course, I have some things that I want to say too.
Right,
so
cool.
don't take it all for yourself. This is for you and me.
Sweet.
All right. Okay. So, question number 1. And I think we asked this in our very first episode, or in season 1. We talked about a quest, but let's start with that. What is a quest?
That's a really good question, right?
Looking at the froggy.
No, I was looking
the froggy who has no name.
No, actually, I was looking at a book. I was looking at a book that I have right here, which I'm gonna
talk about.
Help to answer, right?
Okay, go ahead.
So let's talk about first.
What is a quest?
What is a quest, right? A quest is the idea of searching for the unknown. Okay. Right? Any story that is of any value, right? It's always looking for the unknown. The death of Arthur, right? King Arthur, and the Knights of the Knights of the Round Table. The whole quest for the Holy Grail. That's something that is unknown, and that quest is to really find the things that are inside of you, the things that are innate and dormant inside of you. So one of the cool things that I love about that story is the fact that in their quest, you cannot follow somebody else's path. Like, it has to be like your path.
One that you carved out.
One that you carved out for yourself. Because again, uniquely, you are a manifestation of the universe. Again, I use the Carl Sagan line, we are a way for the universe to know ourselves. So the quest symbolizes, in the physical sense, in what we do in our lives, that quest to transition through life and discover things about ourselves internally. And I'm going to be hesitant to use different words like spiritually or psychologically, but these are things that we discover within ourselves. Consequently, by doing that, we are also bringing that out into the world, you know?
Every time when I think about a quest, I think about, and which is one of my favorite books, I think about The Alchemist.
Yes.
Because what he was doing was he set out on this journey to find like this treasure, right? And along the way, he encounters all of these varying situations that he didn't expect. And he had to overcome them to get to that place where he found love, right? And so there's this thing on Google, and I have to cheat because I don't know it by heart. But I Googled it. I don't know who said it, but basically it's that he, along the way, he learns to listen to his heart, and more importantly, realizes that his dreams or his personal legend are not just his, but part of the soul of the universe.
Precisely.
Which is exactly what you're saying, which I thought is beautiful. I needed to say that then because I love The Alchemist, and it's something that is more for the people who are not as philosophical and not into mythology and things like that, for them to understand.
But I'm going to disagree with that statement, right? And the reason why I disagree with that statement is because innately, right, we have arrived at this point in the history of humankind through stories. There's, if you look at stories and the stories, how they've been passed down constantly, we've taken those stories, right? Some of us accept it as ultimate truth. Some of us, like scientists, right? Let's say you are curious about it. Wait a minute. Let me find out if this is true. And we either validate or discard those stories, right? The Alchemist is a perfect example, and it's a great story. I mean, Paulo Coelho did it's one of my favorite books by far, and I remember reading that book in one night. Like one night, I remember just reading that book in one night.
I think it took me like 2 weeks.
I was like so engrossed in it because it encompassed the idea of the mythical, you know, alchemy, which is somewhat of a, you know, it's alchemy is like the birth of science, so to speak, and again, science stems from that spiritual quest of understanding the elements of the universe. And combining those elements to create something, which is in turn what needs to happen inside of you. You know, the projection is this: the what happens, your experiences, the situations that you faced in life. It's like taking those all those chemicals in the alchemy, all those materials, that raw material, molding it and shaping it into creating something other than what it was. And that's what the quest is. You know, it's experiencing these things in your life, in the here and now, mixing and manifesting it and making something new that brings about another form of life.
Okay, and so that leads me into my next question. Why do we need to do that? Why should we do that?
Why should we do that? So the problem I think that we're facing right now, it's kind of like depicted. I was looking back because the book is like right behind me, and is
Undiscovered Self.
Carl Jung and the Undiscovered Self, right? And one of the things that Carl Jung and the Undiscovered Self really talks about is the problem that we are facing right now. We are in a very advanced, modern, progressive society, but our society has completely devalued the internal aspect of life, and it's really focusing primarily on the physical and the mental. And what I mean by that is particularly the example of a science that's really run amok and is taking the value out of life is the science of probability, right? He talks about statistics and how statistics really is minimizing what the potential of a human being is, because everything is data quantified and everything is measured in a sense of what is valued and what is not valued, you know? And we've done that throughout history to very, very, really bad results. You know, you see what happens when the Western mind is run wild and no longer has I wouldn't say a God figure, but that spiritual that internal recognition that we live in two realms, right? We live in the physical, but we also live in something that combines nature itself. You know, this is something that ancient what is called what they're called primitive cultures, but they really were really advanced. You know, understood that there is a balance between man and nature, and that man is not separate from nature, but a part of it. You know,
which is what even Joseph Campbell talks
about it. And what he does is that he looked at all these mythologies, but it is the realization that you are part of the whole. We right now are not that anymore.
Okay.
You know, everything is just based on numbers. Yeah. Everything is based on the data. Does the data says this? Does the data says that? You know, we are in a swing of just, my life doesn't mean anything unless I can measure it and quantify it. If it's not quantifiable, it doesn't need to be around.
Okay. So then what, to lead into the next question that I have is because you're kind of answering it right now, because you're talking about that, what prevents us from going or, you know, embarking on our quest and, or living life as a quest? Is it what you're talking about, the numbers and things like that?
I think we live in a society that is very, very focused on materialism.
Yes, I think it's a societal thing.
Yeah, it's a societal thing, but it is also an individual.
It's a personal thing. It's absolutely, a personal thing, because we make that choice.
We make those choices, right? Yeah. And we make those choices to either to live simply or to be somebody.
Right.
In terms of, I have status, I have this, I have that, I have all this stuff, right? And you see the balance of that shifting. You know, it's not enough anymore just to live a regular quote unquote spiritual life. That's not enough. You know, we don't push our kids to get the most out of what they can, you know, to live in life. We don't really focus on a family, on that nucleus of the family as much as we did in the past. You know, communities are not really communities. They are ways and means to maximize profit. You know, even communities that are traditional communities, it's all about how do I maximize profits and how do I get a competitive advantage over the next person. And we're in this hamster wheel constantly and all the time. But consequently, you could see breaking at the seams. You know, I mean, recently here we experienced two young professionals that worked the entire life to get to that status just commit suicide. Yeah. You know, and the suicide are skyrocketing. The level of hate and separation are skyrocketing. The I'm this and you're that, and the tribalism of things skyrocketing. You know, so why does that happen? It's because we are constantly and more focused on statistical measurements and the idea of no longer that separation.
Okay. So then just to recap, a quest is basically, to summarize what you're saying and to use Carl Jung's words, is to discover the undiscovered self.
Yes.
Is that a good way to put it?
That's a very good way to put it. Yeah,
it's going exactly on a journey to discover that of what we don't know.
And what we don't know about ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
And then so looking at life as a quest is important because discovering these things about ourselves. Okay.
It brings about new life.
Right.
It brings about
different
perspectives, you know. I'll give you an example of my personal experience, and I could only speak from experience, my personal experiences. Right, I had to let go of a lot of anger and a lot of things like that, both from growing up, professionally and things of that nature. There's a lot of things I feel like I've always I was always overlooked because of who I am. I'm outspoken. I'm passionate. I'm emotional. I think about things. I want things to be done in a certain way, and all those things are. Were always kind of like, I feel like I was constantly pushing against the wall. So I was angry, and understanding why that anger was happening inside of me, and then questioning it and going to try things to create my own world, as difficult as it has been. It's given me a different zest, and it's given me like a different perspective of seeing who I am, the things that I do need to work on, but also creating this, which with the intention of bringing some light into the world, so that someone's life might be just a little bit tad better. I have many examples. Luckily, I've had examples of individuals that have able to come back to me and say, you know what, thank you for telling me that, or thank you because when you always told me this and that and the other. I'm grateful for that. I'm lucky to have been in those situations. Like, I'm really fortunate. But when you're going through the crap and the shit, you don't really think of any of that. But in retrospect, you're like really thankful for that. So that right there, just bringing a little bit of light into the world, is like the beautiful thing about it. You're creating something out of all the muck, and that's kind of like one of the beauties of it all.
Okay. So another question that I have, just moving on to the next segment of our episode here, are what types of quests can we embark on? Because I'm assuming there are different types of quests. People have different types of quests.
Yeah, I mean, there's traditionally there's the quest of transitioning in the different stages of life, right? And those things, I mean, I don't think it matters really how young you are. And some people disregard like younger people as to, wow, as long as you do this, you'll be fine.
So are you saying that really young toddlers can be on a quest?
I would say that quest right there is pretty much set.
Okay.
So
you're talking
what I'm talking about primarily adolescents.
Okay.
Adolescence, like that's the very first quest that you embark on, right? Is to figure out who I am independently of what I've been given to this point. Yes, you've been given certain skills, you've been given certain guidance through your family, education system, but that's an identity that has been given to you. Now the first quest is that quest for self-reliance and self-identity.
So that's, for me personally, I sort of feel like that happened around, I was kind of young. I was like maybe 7 or 8, because my mom and dad, my time, we used to be left home alone. Me, and I would be watching my brother, who was younger than me. He's going to say, it's on record now. Darn. So I think that is a matter of just where you're at, right? Because I feel like I was trying to figure out, like, I was given the responsibility of taking care of my brother at a young age. And so I was doing things like checking the doors and doing things, and that was to be responsible. Yeah. You know what I mean? Is that a quest?
Well, that is, it is.
Is that part of it?
It's part of the formational stage, right?
Okay.
It's part of that stage in which, that's the camel stage, so to speak. That's when you get all the instruction. Like, this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to take care of your brother, and this is how you learn. What I mean is a little bit later down in life, and it happens. Sometimes it happens within a certain age. Sometimes it's primarily psychologically that this stuff happens, mentally that is happening internally. But it's a point in which you had all these experiences that were taught to you, that were given to you, that idea of responsibility, the idea of study hard, go to school, make sure that you get all this stuff, and this will happen. But then it goes to a point in which those rails are taken away.
It's like a bicycle.
Exactly. Yeah. The little wheels are taken off. Yeah. And now you have to go out there in the real world, so to speak, and become an adult. And that's the first transition that we embark on. And to be able to go out there, be able to be socially mature, to become more self-aware as to who I am, not so much in relationship to my world that was somewhat said, but in a world that is not known to me. You know, and that is the young adult's quest, to find their place in the midst of all that. Okay. You know, then you go into the transition of becoming, if you decide there's as an adult, once you manifest an adult and you have a sense of identity, and that identity will continue to evolve as you go on, but that is the very first quest, right? You establish a particular set of values. Like, these are the values that I would live my life up to this particular point. These are the things that I believe, the things that I want, and the things that I want. Primarily, you know, in that age, they're looking for freedom and autonomy. They're looking for a way to be financially independent and secure. You know, and that encompasses, what career am I going to follow? You know, do I want to pursue a family? So these are the other quests in which that you are involved. Now there's the other underlying quest or the underlying theme that goes amongst all these things is, are you aware of the things that you're learning along the way to evolve in a mental and psychological and spiritual level? Okay. You know, does that answer that question?
Well, yeah, it does. You talk about the different stages, the developmental stages that we encounter, and you're talking about, okay, this is sort of when you start to encounter that quest, or you start to realize that you're on this quest, right? So you're mentally aware of that, right? And so you have this awareness, but you're also, what I was talking about is what are the types of quest that you go on as an individual.
Yeah.
There's the one that you talk about. I think you talked about it before, where you say that we have ones that we choose to go on.
Yes.
And then we have the ones that are chosen for us.
Yeah. So there's this thing, right? And again, it's like a lot of this stuff is part of the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell, and it's the serendipitous adventure, right? And that things just happen and we just go along with it, and then as we go along, it's kind of like in tarot, it's kind of like the fool's journey, that you just go along willy-nilly and just see what happens and what transpires in life, you know. Right. So that's from a standpoint, that's one sort of quest in which you just throw caution to the wind and just see kind of like what happens. And then there's the other ones in which you consciously go into, you know. Again, to give you an example, I just mentioned about adulting. Most of us, when we leave our house and we want that thing, we're just kind of like willy-nilly, just going with it. But then when we decide to go for a particular profession, or we pick a path, then we're consciously going that way. You know, so it's those two you choose. Let's say, for instance, you go into the military, right? That's it's a quest, and it has a certain path, you know, and that's a valid quest. That's a valid thing. You're servicing something other than yourself, you know. So there's those different types, and the overall arcing quest. In those, you know, again, you quest for identity, adulthood. You quest for a profession, a way to become self-reliant and mature. You know, you quest for self-actualizing, that's a big different topic even in and of itself, because that is the ultimate quest, self-actualizing. But that doesn't happen. It's not like setting a goal. It's something that you're constantly learning and improving along the way. Yeah. The cyclical part of our lives are our birth, youth, adolescence, adulthood, maturity, and death. Those are things that are common amongst us. That's something that we cannot escape. You know, it's just the cyclical nature of life. The quest is understanding those transitions, which most of us do not. We do those transitions happen to us really, for us, completely unawares of it. So the idea is to embark on that quest consciously and understand the different stages and understand how we do that. And by doing that, we self-actualize.
So being present.
Being present. I mean,
like how because we don't ever you just said it. We don't ever self-actualize.
Yeah.
We're always we're always in flux, right? So you're saying to live each day then and be present in each moment and be aware and conscious of what we're doing, how we're acting, how we're behaving. And it's almost like talking about emotional intelligence.
It is.
That's exactly what it is.
This term's emotional intelligence, the whole mental health movement. These things are not. They're just repackaged concepts of what religions were supposed to be, of what mythologies were supposed to be. Religions have done a shitty job at really understanding at really presenting what these stages are.
Yeah.
And
I can see that.
And allowing people the understanding to transition to that with a vitality of beauty, of that of fear. Because you embark on these things, and it's like when you go on this, you start really understanding things about yourself, that you have a dark side, that you have both you have opposites. You got both a feminine and a masculine side of you, and everybody thinks about it. It's like, what the hell does that mean? It's not, positive, feminine and masculine, all that stuff is just two sides of the same coin. All these things, but these things are inside of us. And as you go on your quest, you start discovering them. You start understanding that. You start integrating that into your life, and your life becomes richer because of it. And consequently, like that drop in the ocean, because you're living from that point, then in anything that you do in the physical realm, because we live in a physical reality, we live in a world, then your life becomes more fulfilling.
Right.
And it becomes more...
So that's the solution, basically.
Yeah, that's looking at life as a quest, and being curious, and being aware of all these different energies inside of us, and outside of us, and outside of us, like, makes life much better. But now you're measuring but the question is, and this is the problem, and kind of like alluded in question one, is that, okay, how do we measure that? Because I know some smart ass person is going to be out there. It's like, but I can't measure that. I don't know how to measure that. What's the data? What does the data say? How do I know? It's like, if I think like this and all that kind of stuff, I'm not going to have money. I'm not going to have all this, and that's the thing that you have to work out for yourself. But this goes back to the part of the Undiscovered Self, because if we start thinking like that, that's a very one-sided mentality. It's a completely one-sided mentality, right?
Yeah. I think you close yourself off to the possibilities that are available to you, or the opportunities that are available. When you have that closed-minded affect, you're not going to get things that you could, or you're not going to attract things that you could potentially experience that are beautiful things. And I think that's what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
So just to recap this segment, then I'm going to ask you sort of a question. So I just want you to finish what my sentence is. Okay. So by knowing the stages and clarifying our human developmental stage, we could
bring a zest to life, a curiosity, live like a young child that is always curious about what's next. About the possibilities of what could be. Right. Living from that standpoint, Not
living in the matrix.
Not living in the matrix.
That's what it is. That's what we just go, it's monotony. It's like you said, the hamster wheel. We just do things. It's very monotonous. We just do things. We don't even think about, we talked about this in season 1. I was telling you about how I drive to work, and I literally get to work and I'm like, I don't even remember how I got here. That's what you're saying.
But here's the thing, right? And just to kind of like close this segment, you mentioned the Matrix, right? And in the new Matrix Resurrections, the analyst kind of like states why the Matrix is so powerful and why it works so well. And it's because he understood, and the society understands this, that as long as you keep people between desire and fear, they're content.
You're right.
Because once you go past desire and fear, and everything becomes unknown, and you don't know what the outcome 100% is going to be like, and projections and quantitative analysis and all
that's
this.
the control part of us, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is like us completely trying to control everything. So then what happens is that because we're between this thing right here, there's no new vitality in the world. There's no newness. It's just the same old stuff.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. So let's move on to the next segment. My question to you is, what if I'm presented with, or I embark on or I'm presented with a situation, right? How do I go about following that quest? Because every situation that we're presented with is a quest, right? Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So what's the process? Give me a layout. I know you're talking about numbers and statistics and whatever. I don't want to be like specific, but there is a process to following your quest or embarking on the quest. So what is that? I
mean, the one example, and this is one that I was lucky enough to come across, and still I'm learning it, because there's so many examples of it. But the one that I've come close to is the hero's journey, right? Of Joseph Campbell, and the idea of either something happens to you that forces you to go out on this journey, right? So, for instance, death comes to our life unexpectedly, people that we love, and they come and go. That is a quest in and of itself to find what is the meaning of life if this person is gone.
We actually, you just made me remember Terry Stone's interview in season 1. That was a prime example because she met that reality at a young age.
Yes.
And she lost her husband, sadly. And she literally shared about how she had to reinvent herself, so to speak, even though she was completely happy and it was a beautiful life. Nothing was wrong.
Yep.
She had to okay, I have 2 children now. I need to, I got to continue to live. This is what he would want from, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is that what
that's exactly it.
Perfect
so
example.
Again, and that's a perfect example because we think the way that the hero's journey is portrayed primarily in movies and primarily in storytelling, right? But we see that in the big screen, but then we don't see how does that manifest in my life? And that's exactly how we manifest. You go. Sometimes you got somebody there to help you through the process. Sometimes it's a physical individual. Sometimes it's just, internal emotions. And then you go into the abyss and you go into the darkness and you go into all that muck that is there. Some people don't make it out of that. They stay there. They get stuck in that. Others come out of it on the other side and are able to come to life with a new perspective, a new appreciation of life, a new way of looking at what they do in the world with the appreciation of wow, life is finite. And at this moment, right, and this is the beauty of the hero's quest, right, because a lot of people look at the hero's quest and they always think that the hero always becomes triumphant. And that's not the case. If you read The Hero with 1,000 Faces, you start seeing that the hero does become becomes back to life, reaffirming life and bringing it with something new, or the hero becomes the villain, right? A lot of people don't like the Star Wars episodes 1, 2, and 3. Those are my favorite by far.
Those are the best, I think. Yeah.
I could understand why people don't like it.
Say that, yeah.
I get why, but those are my 3 favorite because it shows how a Messiah, a kid comes from a virgin, right? The one that was touted as the savior and was built up as that, eventually became the villain, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a story that happens all too often, but we don't think that it happens, but it happens on a regular basis and constantly. It happens in our education system, and I've seen it firsthand. It happens in corporations, people that achieved grand things, amazing things, but then they become the oppressors of other people.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, and there's people that have been given hands and help to get to a different level, but then they refuse to do that. Yeah. And then they start exalting their greatness. You know, like we see that all too often in our world, but we think of it, oh, that's just in the movie. No, this is what happens in real life.
Yeah, definitely. Real life.
You know, so the idea is that understanding that the hero cycle, understanding the fact that even though that quest, that transition of going and seeing all those things, it may not happen precisely. There are about 70 different portions of a hero's journey, but it may not happen in the exact same way. But it's just a cyclical thing. You know, the one that is more appealing to me and the one that I see kind of like day in and day out that has nothing to do with movie is that one that I mentioned about you see it all the time. You know, the kid or the young person that is always exalted. Oh, you're great, you're great, you're great. Oh, you're super smart. Oh, you do this and all that kind of stuff. And then they forget that the reason why they achieve what they have achieved is because someone was there to give them a hand. I've seen it and I lived it and I seen it with my own hands and with my own eyes as to having seen someone almost destitute and confused in their lives, have someone help them up to really just backstab people in the back and just for their own self-aggrandizement. And that's something that what it shows is not that you could judge that and say, oh, that person's evil. And I wouldn't say that. I would say that person is unaware. Yeah. You know, of
Well, I think that people in those situations don't realize that they're so not conscious of what's happening, that they don't realize that somebody extended a hand to help you to the stage. And then they get into that position, whatever that position is or status or whatnot, and they just forget. Yeah. You know, and then sort of leave.
Well, because you think that is you. Right. You know, and a part of it is you have done that. I mean, you see it in professional people that have high. I wouldn't generalize, but there's a big segment of the education of people that have high degrees that have achieved great. I mean, it's not easy to go and get a 4-6 year degree. No, it's not, you know, and they're intellectually gifted and they're very smart, but they tend to look down upon somebody that hasn't achieved that. You know, I know there's people that have achieved great financial success, and again, there is something to say about their efforts. I'm not disputing that, but again, like I have said before, their fate has a role to play in a lot of things. And just because you have achieved that doesn't make you superior. That's been the history of our societies over and over again. Yeah, there's been someone that has achieved some great things and has accomplished or led people to great things, to turn around and destroy lives and destroy things. And that's an energy that is inside of us. So the hero's journey gives us those roadmaps, gives us those caution signs, gives us that idea to kind of like follow. I like to talk more about it in the simpler, realistic terms. But if people go on YouTube, you could actually, there's a lot of great YouTubers that talk about the hero's quest, the hero's journey. And a lot of information that it talks about the hero's journey. My perspective on it is that it is not only meant for storytelling. It's really to me, in the way that I've used it in my life, it's really the ultimate self-help.
It's like a lived experience. It's like a real thing.
It's a lived experience.
But you have to be able to be cognizant enough to be aware enough to understand that that's what you're going through too.
Yeah,
right?
It is.
So you sort of touched on this, but to basically just recap this segment. So understanding the stages of that quest can
put you on a path that is uniquely yours, right? And it'll give you, if you're open to it, it will give you insights on many different things. And again, I can't give you for certain what is going to happen. And anybody that tells you if you do this is what's going to happen, it's not, because you'll discover so many things about yourself, about the beauty of the world, the universe. There's so much to discover, and to give you this is what's going to happen at the end is going to be too simple. I think that at the end of the quest, right, there is. And I think that you're seeing it now in science, is that there is certain realizations that come about opposing energies, right? And those opposing energies, or those, are on the outside in our physical world, in the universe, but they're also internally, because we are a microcosm of the universe. So all that is inside of us too. So those dual forces are not to be like split up and separated. It's supposed to be integrated, and those are the things that you'll discover. That's one of the many things that you'll discover as you go into the journey, and
so you're learning about you're learning about the dark side of you and your dark nature, and also the good things that make you vulnerable and humbled and things like. Is that what you're
exactly? Yeah, and it's
and you shouldn't discard those things. You should embrace them and sort of understand them. Yeah, and then what do you do with that?
It's like creating it's like creating a dance, and out of that dance, that's where like creativity and beauty and those things kind of come from.
Do you think that when people discover that they have, and this isn't part of the questioning, but I'm just curious, that when people discover that they have this the shadow, right? Because that's what we call it, the shadow, because all of us have it, period. Nobody's free from that, right? That they feel like, oh man, like, well, how do I deal with this? How do you come to a place where you create this dance and this sort of like, coming together of, this is my dark side, I understand it, and this is what I have, and this is my balance. Like, how do you do that? How do you create that balance?
Well, first you got to admit, and it is not as simple as say, well, I'm a sinner. No. That's like a very simple way to look at it, and it's like,
I have a tendency to do this when I'm with somebody, and I put off this negative vibe, or and I really need to, and that's really not cool. Or is that? I mean, that's really simple, but it's
self-awareness on that part. That is exactly it. That's just being aware of who you are, and then be able to mitigate that, and understand that sometimes you do have to be assertive or use that energy, and sometimes you have to kind of like balance it out.
So that's the dance.
Right. It's being able to figure out, and sometimes it works itself out okay, and sometimes it doesn't work out itself okay.
Yeah. We had a conversation with somebody in season 1. I'm referring to season 1 because we talked to so many great people, and one of those people she had said, I have a really hard, I like to do this. I like to, for people, she extends herself to the max, right? To the point where she's like, I have to learn how to say no.
Yes.
That's so that's a good example for me. That's recognizing that no is not a bad word, right?
I mean, I'll give you an example of young people, particularly now because of the music. I mean, we grew up with music in the 90s, which I think was one of the best eras of music altogether ever. 60s, 70s, 80s. I mean, after the 90s, I don't know what happened. Personally, I'm just speaking personally.
That is your opinion.
That is my opinion personally, right? But when I'm looking at the at music right now, right, I'm seeing a music that is very. It reminds me of Dionysus, right? He's one of the gods. He is just about just raw energy, sexual energy, just raw, and debauchery and hedonism and all that stuff. That's like the energy that you see in our music culture right now. And a lot of people criticize it, and I understand why it's criticized, but it's also saying something. What is lacking in our integration of that energy into our world. You know, that everything that is on our media, it's like, and on our music, is really one-sided.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's primarily either a quasi love or lust.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a reflection of the lack of integration that we have within ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just my hypothesis. I don't know if this is right or this is wrong.
No, I understand.
But what I see that as a society, that's it's really in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
But what does that mean is that with the pendulum is swaying, is swinging in a certain way, you know, but also, if we swing it on the other way, but it becomes super conservative, super orthodox, then it becomes problematic. So it's like the balance that needs to happen, because you do need those urges and impulses they need their time and their place. But it's important to be able to understand how to do that in a way that is creative and productive,
right, and doesn't sabotage your life or the things that you're trying to do.
Yes,
that's what
exactly.
happens. People go off the deep end and they sort of just like, I'm just
and it causes a lot of pain.
A lot of pain. You hurt other people. You hurt yourself, and more importantly, so yeah.
So yeah. So when it comes to that, I don't know if I answered your questions.
You did.
Rambled on.
You didn't know you rambled, but it was a good ramble. But we're gonna go on to the next.
So what was the question again?
It was.
I just want to make sure that I answer that line.
So by understanding.
Yeah.
So by understanding the stages of our quest, you could. And you answered that question.
Yeah, we could integrate,
create a balance.
We integrate the opposites of our world individually as the drop in the ocean, and then consequently we could do that as the ocean itself.
Exactly. Yeah. Together. Gotcha. Okay. So next, how do I know that I'm ready for a quest?
Okay. This is the part that's very interesting, because it's sometimes not logical. It's emotional.
Yeah.
Like your emotions, those are like, when you go to a stage in which nothing makes sense, you know, typically this is kind of like qualified, I think, as depression, you know, and all that stuff. You know, yes, there are chemical imbalances in your world. I've been through that, so I understand it. But a lot of it also has to do with what's happening internally. There's a disconnect. There is a void that you feel. You know, there is like, oh my God, something's not right. I just don't understand it. You know, I think that the therapy that I've been to, they're trying to logically make sense out of it, and it just doesn't work like that. You know, that's like the triggers, right? Those emotions, that stuff. You know, that you feel there's a certain void. That's my experience with it. I mean, there's other people that boredom. I'm bored. You know,
I need to do something with my life.
The routine that just feels like, oh my God, mundane. Those are signs that you're ready to embark on something else. You know, and at that point, then you have to question yourself and see if you are, again, desire and fear. Are you afraid of losing what you have? Right? And your desire to be safe, are those two forces stronger than your impulse to change your current situation? You know?
And I think what people may get from our conversation, and I want to make sure that we convey the message, is that it could be something as simple as, I'm just bored and I need to change up. I need to go out and socialize more. I need to like experience going to eat at a restaurant by myself and integrate this more into my life. And what will I discover when I do that? You know what I mean? Or go into nature and explore that. And it really is that simple. Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's not this fundamental, oh my God, like scientific, like there's elements of that. Yeah. But I think that what we're talking about is something that is so simple. It could be, we decided that, we don't want to watch TV every single day. Mm-hmm. We need to stop watching TV. We don't watch any crazy TV, but we watch like documentaries and nature shows, and Insecure. We watch things like that. We do watch Insecure because, I like my Issa, but we decided that even though we're watching things that are in a lot of ways educational, we knew that there was a lot of other things that we could be doing with our time. Reading, journaling, meditating, spending time together, spending time apart.
Reading.
I just said that. So that's what I'm saying. Yeah, you're not paying attention to me?
I am.
So I feel like just that change is embarking on a different quest for you and I.
And again, that's I'm glad that you brought that up, because everybody we have this sense of grandeur when it comes to these things. Like, it has to be something that is like, like blowing up. Yeah. It's like most of the insights and the things that you have are like,
it's in those little moments.
It's like little glimpses of things, But think about that, right? Because I always had I used to go out like on vacation by myself before we got married. I used to go to the movies by myself, and people was like, "Ugh, you're weird,"
you're weird.
But because we are afraid of that stigma of, if we try to do something that is completely outside of the norm, are we going to be judged? Are we going to be typecast? Are we going to be looked at as outsiders?
Yeah.
That's the fear.
Yeah.
The fear is that we know what we want, and we know what we need to do, and we know that I'm going to feel better if I do this. But
I, this is also speaking to the people that would say, I would never go to a restaurant by myself. Oh my God. And like, why do people feel like, oh my God, I would never do that? Like, is that telling them that that's just not for you? Then that's just that you don't need to do that. Is that?
I mean, why if that's something that you want to do
it,
but you're afraid?
See, I did it for the first time, and all of the feelings. I did it years and years ago. I went to a movie by myself because I'm off on Fridays, in the summer. So lucky to have Fridays off in the summer. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to take advantage. You were working, and I was like, I'm going to take advantage of my time and start doing things that I want to do. I've never went to the beach by myself. I would go with friends, went to the beach by myself, read a book, listened to music, relaxed, walked on the beach by myself, went to a movie by myself. You know what I mean? And I've eaten by myself. And it is weird to eat by yourself because you're just like, okay, feel like I should be talking to somebody. But getting the experiences that I had were fulfilling. Yeah. It was like, I did that. I felt good. I watched this movie by myself. That's good. You would never have gone to see the girl movie I went to see anyways. No. So I went by myself. Yeah. Emphatic. No. But I mean, it was liberating to do that. I got popcorn. I got like Raisinets. I had some water. I mean, I was like enjoying myself. Yeah. But not everybody wants to do that. And in fact, they frown on somebody who would do that. Like, I would never go to the movies by myself. Why would I do that? That's crazy.
Yeah. But your job as an individual, that if there's something that you would like to try or explore, not to be bombed down by that. Because remember, the quest is uniquely yours. A soul's quest is uniquely your quest. All this stuff that we're talking about is uniquely yours. So when something is uniquely yours, there is an aspect of solitude and an aspect of loneliness that you have to be able to accept
and confront,
mitigate, and overcome.
Yeah.
Because if not, you are going to be at the whim of the things that have been dictated for you. That is weird that you do something by yourself. That is weird. Like, who gets this a lot? Men. Men don't like to read. Because weird, like, that's stupid. A lot of men are afraid, like, particularly where I came from, a lot of people never read.
Right.
Men particularly, because that's like, oh, you're a nerd. That's weird, But it is important to read. It's important to write. It is important to be able to do those things, to be able to vocalize the things that you're feeling inside. And culturally, there's things that go with that. But again, it's like, if you are too bound by your culture and it's and cultures are good because it gives us an aspect of identity, but also very constricting.
Yeah.
Because if you don't break out of that, you don't see what else you could discover about yourself.
Right. It's good to experience other cultures.
Yeah.
You know.
But again, if your culture is too strong and you're too bound to it, and you don't break out of that culture, then that's it. That's all you are.
That's what I'm saying. So, to say that, it's experience, like we go and experience other cultures and how people live and want to, and I think that's,
it gives a
different perspective. Yeah, you can appreciate how other people live. And I think that's unique, and then it's an experience for the individual that you really can't take away from that person, which I think is cool. So basically what you're saying is that we need to be able to listen to our emotions, listen to the feelings that we're getting, and that will dictate when it's time for us to go on a quest. And that
and then when it starts, now where do you start? That's the question.
Yeah.
And what do you do? That's another question. And these are things that we'll talk about throughout the season and throughout our episodes moving forward. We'll talk about what to do and how to navigate,
or at least take the experiences from other people in terms of how they navigated it. Because I don't think there's really any regimented way in how you do a quest.
No,
but there are people who have experienced it, ourselves included, and are still experiencing it.
Oh yeah,
this is an all.
This is
constant,
a quest right now.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And how did we overcome, and how did we confront those things?
And that's why it's important to listen to other people's stories, to read books that have a significance, because our kids are taught to read books for the purpose of understanding the information, understanding the literature aspects of it, the components of it, the grammar of it all. And sometimes the message and the meaning of it gets completely disregarded.
Yeah.
And the point of literature and the point of the books that you read is because there is something there for you to take and apply it into your life.
Personal lives, yeah.
And seeing, and any good book, right? Any good book from philosophy to myth, it's like when you read it, you should see yourself in it.
Yeah.
Or or whoever is writing it be able to evoke you the emotions, in there that you feel in your life, and then you could apply a new perspective into your life.
Yeah. Okay. So you basically have answered this question to sort of finalize this segment, but basically by listening to our intuition and our emotions, we could
begin to create a path. That's the beginning. We created a path, and that's somewhat like the starting point. That is what Joseph Campbell will call the call to the adventure. That's the starting point.
Okay, the call to the adventure.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay. All right. So for those of us who are wondering now, what lies at the end of our quest?
That's a question that's pretty cool, I think.
Really?
Yeah, I find it fascinating.
I'm intrigued.
Because, I was listening to Neil deGrasse Tyson being interviewed by Bill Moyers from PBS the other day, right? And he was talking, Bill Moyers asked him, what is the question that keeps you up at night, right? And he's like, I don't have that answer because even I could come up with a question, but I know there was another question after that question. So he's like, so it was like, he's like, he doesn't have an answer to that question, because there's a couple of things that we have discovered as a collective conscious that we've gone along, right? Number one, that what is above is below. So in essence, we are manifestations of the cosmos, of the universe, of the divine, the self, whatever. We are a manifestation of that. It's been proven scientifically that we are made of star stuff, so to speak, and our world is made of that. So one of the realizations that an individual will inevitably arrive at is that the person next to you, the things that are around you are all part of the whole. So the good and the bad and everything, it's part of the same thing. You know, we share, I think is individual human beings, I said 99.9 one time, but I don't know. I don't think that's accurate. But we human beings share most of the same DNA. And I think what changes is just very small variations. We share a lot of, I think it's 92 to 95% the same DNA as our closest family animals, which are primates and all that stuff. So the first thing that you realize is that oneness of everything. You know, there is an interconnectedness of everything. You know, my actions and the way that I choose to treat someone will have an effect, either temporarily or later. You know, how I choose to interact with someone has an effect. I may not see it right away, but it does. You know, either a kindness or violence. Those things have a repercussion somewhere down the line, even if we don't see it. So one of the things that you realize is that there's we're interconnected. You know, that's
like a butterfly effect almost was what you're saying.
Yeah, that our actions have an effect on something else. Yeah, that's one thing that you recognize. Then something else in the more, you know, that's in the big picture, in the micro, right? You start recognizing that. On an individual self, you start recognizing that you live in two worlds. You know, you have your conscious self, your ego, right? I mean, everybody always says that the ego is a bad thing. The ego is not a bad thing. You know, what the ego is the things that you are conscious of within yourself, right? And the idea of the ego, the purpose of the ego, or the purpose of the totality of the self, the conscious and the subconscious, is to bring as many things, to merge the subconscious and the conscious as much as possible. But that's what the self is. You know, to have a balance between the things that you know and manifest on a regular basis and the subconscious things that you don't know, you know, and bring and create a bridge between those two. And that's the other thing that you start realizing, that you are more than what you have been programmed to believe and structured to believe. And when you begin to see that, and when you begin to understand that, then you begin to really say, okay, I'm going to try to do something different. I'm going to try to go this way, understanding that this is what it is right now, but it doesn't have to be like that. Right? So you start learning these things about yourself. So to answer your question, in the spectrum, in the individual self, you start seeing that there's two aspects of you in many senses, and you begin to integrate that, and you live accordingly to it. If you begin to live accordingly, there's going to be, you know, things will begin to develop. And then the other part is the oneness of it all, you know, like the interconnectedness of it all. And then there's more after that. I don't know what else it is. You know, everybody, I think, is trying to go in that direction. I don't know about different dimensions and things like that. There's people that talk about all that stuff. I don't want it. I personally, I'm not at that stage. Because my mind is simple. I'm really concerned about integrating the things that I know.
Your mind is simple?
Yes, it is. Integrating, because who we want to talk to are the people that are just trying to understand this on the level that they're at, and kind of like beginning to make more sense of their life. If that's something that you would like to discover more, there's all kinds of stuff out there that talks about the interdimensions. But I like things like astronomy, which shows like, wow, look at We found this same materials and stuff out there, and it's in here in ourselves, and the idea that energy never dies. So therefore, we don't really, our physical forms die, but the energy, you can't destroy energy, and you can't create it. So it's just interesting stuff. And this is what scientists are doing and should be doing. But I do have a problem with the science of probability as it applies to human beings. That's always been like my thing. Mm-hmm. I don't mind, probability being attached to like the markets, but when it comes to individuals, when it comes to telling a person from the hood, well, because you don't have a dad, you're more than likely to do that.
Probably not going to make it.
You're probably not going to make it. Well, you know what? Do you have a high possibility of doing that? It's like, don't do that. Yeah. It's like what you're doing is that you're creating a limiting belief on individuals. Mm-hmm. It's like, yes, shit has been bad. Things haven't been the greatest. Yes, it's ideal that you have all these two parents, a good education system, but that doesn't mean that there's no more to you than just this. That you do have the capability. So what if you don't go to a Harvard or Yale or an Ivy League? So what if you don't get a specific degree, or become or follow a specific path? Mm-hmm. We need to create a world in which there are other possibilities as well, and that's only comes from individuals.
So then, basically, what I'm getting from what you're telling me is that we need to be able to be conscious enough or self-aware enough to understand that we're a part of this system, this collective, this whole, right? Mm-hmm. And that just to sort of recap everything that we've talked about today is that a quest is something that is a constant. You're always doing it. It's a never-ending cycle that you go through, and that even upon you're ceasing to, your last breath on the planet, you still have this energy that continues and exists because you can't get rid of energy. It just continues and exists, right? Mm-hmm. And so what we need to do is we need to choose, and we need to decide how we choose the quest that's going to impact our lives. And
that's you brought me back to like the Matrix. Well, that's a problem, right? Free will.
Yeah.
We choose. We choose, and we a lot of the times I end some posts and some things with the choice is yours at the bottom, right? Because it ultimately is, it ultimately is. Yeah. I'm not going to tell you that, from my experience and living introspectively and thinking like that, it hasn't always been easy. It's not easy right now. It's not easy right now. It's not easy to really be alone when you're hurt and you're confronting things, and overcoming the ideas of like failure and success or lack thereof, and and it's like, oh my God, I'm this age, and I according to society, I should have been here. Oh my God, it's like everywhere I go, I'm not really, I really don't fit in. It's like it's hard to confront those things, but if you do confront it and you realize, wow, the truth is that I got to create something that's uniquely mine. Mm-hmm. And again, that brings fear, because what if it doesn't work? What if a Source Quest gets stuck and nobody ever listens to this? Then what? Mm-hmm. Then my life is over.
And there's that possibility. So then
there's always a possibility,
of course,
right? So then you start thinking, okay, then what do you do? And again,
that's the quest.
That is the quest.
Going on the quest, experiencing something, and then coming to a conclusion that is either this is something that I want to continue, or this is something that I need to I need
maybe I need to go in a different direction.
But there's nothing wrong with that. It's being aware enough to understand that, okay, you know what?
Yeah.
It's time for me to do something different, or I need to take this to a different level or on this avenue rather than this. And there's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of people look at that as failure. And a lot of people look at that as, oh, I'm a nobody. I'm never going to be successful. I'm not making any money.
And those pressures come from outside of us.
Right.
Again, that goes back to our social conditioning and the way that people have made us feel when we were growing up. And again, those people they seemed, because they're in a position of authority. I mean, that's a perfect example right there. Remember, this is one of the things that you hear all the time when teachers tell kids you're not going to amount to anything. That really is deep and tough, because you're in a position of authority. Yeah. You're in a position of power. And granted, you have gone on your quest, right? You chose a path. You are successful in that path. You have arrived at where you are because of hard work, because of your dedication, because of your God-given, your universe-given talent, of your faculty of whatever. But when you fail to realize the role of the unknown in your quest to arrive at that point, in your effort, but you choose to treat somebody like that power right there, it's insignificant when you do it.
Of course. It
doesn't mean anything to you. You're never going to, because they're doing it out of frustration. But that right there has the power to propel someone in one direction or on another.
Words.
And your actions, they're very powerful.
I think more words than actions, personally. I think that words can be destructive, and they can, like you said, they can propel somebody into one. There's a fork in the road for everybody, one this way or that way, and one could lead them down this path. Who knows? They might be successful anyways on this path or this path, either path.
Yeah.
But yet we exercise a lot of power over other people, that we don't realize that we have, and that's, I think, the level of awareness and the consciousness that you are trying to and that's what convey.
And that's what you developed, and you're fine along the way in the quest, because again, there's a lot of poetry in the self-help industry, in religions. There's a lot of poetry, right? That and it has its place. I get it. But the simplicity of it all is that it's not just simply as say, just be kind. Be kind. Okay, what the fuck does that mean? You be kind. Okay. But why? And like, what is the thing? What's why? Why do I have to be? That's a very existentialist thing to say, right? Because when you are someone that understands that the world means nothing, or to you is nothing, so there's no purpose, or there's whatever, why do I have to do that? I worked hard, so I deserve what I got.
Yeah.
And to an extent, you're right. You worked hard. But again, if you really are in a journey and you really understand that you overcame obstacles and you had challenges and it was tough, and it was challenging and it was difficult for you, those things, either what they'll do is that they'll make you feel like you're superior. Oh my God, look at what a great boy I am. Or it will give you like the compassion to say, holy shit, if that was hard for me, could you imagine how hard it is to somebody else?
Yeah. That's really, really, really great way to end this whole thing, because we need to wrap it up, B. Just saying. No. If you like this episode, you can check it out and all of our other episodes on our YouTube channel at A Soul's Quest. Make sure you like it, subscribe, share, and you can also find out more about what we're doing at asoulsquest.com.